Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. And today, we're being joined by Campbell, author of The Zen of Beard Trimming. CJ, welcome to the show.
Greetings and salutations.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Are you ready to begin?
Absolutely. Let's get it.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
I think that it's really a twofold thing. Is that one is that you need to understand that there are a lot of people that are going to be looking to offer you services that you do not need. We are in a time in publishing when it is easy to get published. What is difficult is to get eyes to your published work. So just be careful. Taking up anyone's services, know that anytime that you involve someone else in your project, that means that you're letting someone else into your story and your ability to control your own story. I would say the other part of that is that your book cover is astronomically more important than whatever is in between those book covers. So for me personally, I spent about 2 years apart from my writing process, just making sure that I had the cover correct, because when I really thought about the people that I know that own books, a lot of them don't actually read their books, but what they want is they want you to know that they read books, and they want something that looks really great on their shelf. So always be thinking, is the story that I'm writing true to what I want to write, but also is the whole package I'm putting forward something that's going to pull someone in that doesn't care about my work or who I am.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
I think that the hardest part about getting published, I was rather easy. I was discovered through doing live storytelling. I was telling personal stories from my life, and a person was a big fan of my storytelling events and was like, hey, my boyfriend's a publisher and I would like him to work with you. But the hardest part of it for me was actually understanding the legal side of things. And that's where I personally ran into trouble, is not understanding the things that I was signing away or the control that I was giving up. It is easy to get published these days. You can self-publish. It is really hard to find people that are trustworthy and to understand the process of what it takes to be successful in this market.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. When I started my own journey, I started with publishing myself, and then we eventually built the company into a hybrid publishing company. But one of the main things that I wanted to do was basically I wanted to create a publishing company for me. Now that sounds a little selfish, but what I mean by that is I wanted to have a company that I would retain as the author the entire rights. All the royalties come to me. I retain full creative control, and I have buy-in throughout the entire process. And that was the only way that I would actually go in that direction, was basically by starting my own company, because I just wasn't seeing those type of companies out there. And I know you just mentioned about your experience, and we talked a little bit before we started this recording with some of the issues and challenges that you've had with that. Because you're right, you do not want to be signing away your soul, because you just never know what's going to happen to some of these deals. You could be giving up complete creative control with this. You could be giving up your rights. I mean, there's just so many little pieces, and you've got to know your rights going into this, or else, some things can definitely go in a bad direction.
Absolutely. And if I could expound on that just a bit, for instance, because I signed a contract and I thought that I was signing away certain things and not understanding that I was actually signing way more than I ever intended to. And I did my research, and it really came down to is that the people that I was working with weren't as upfront and as ethical as I thought they were. Is that it actually stopped me from bigger opportunities. I had playwrights coming up to me saying like, "I love your book. I want to turn it into a play." And then I was like, "Well, I have this contract," and they like looked at the contract and would immediately run away because they were just like, "Whoa, like there is there is none of the pie left for me." And after my first book tour that I booked myself, I ran into. I'm one of those people that runs into like a like post big project depression. I don't know if you run into that. I know that I do. And your journey reminds me a lot of my own, and an artist that I look up to, Henry Rollins. And I emailed Henry Rollins. I found his email address after my book tour, and I asked him for advice. And he kind of said the same thing. He was like, it was easy. I was just in my favorite punk band. They pulled me up on stage. I was in that punk band, and I wanted to get published. And because I was in a popular punk band, I could just start my own company and just publish wherever I want. And really, I mean, I think that's the kind of attitude that you have to go into in this current market and in this current art space, is understand that you own everything until someone else owns. And in my personal, especially because I'm releasing personal stories of my own life, to lose control of your own personal story is a devastating thing that I would never want another artist to experience.
Yeah, I think one of our biggest selling points is the fact that that's the first thing we mentioned is as our client, you retain full rights. And when you say that to someone, it's almost like the weight of the world has lifted off of them. Because I mean, these books, I mean, obviously I'm a guy, I can't use the given birth example, but for a lot of people it's like you have given birth to this and it's something that you truly love and care about, and the last thing that you want to do is to give up that control, and it's perfectly understandable.
Absolutely, because you may not become like the biggest author in the world, but like your book, your art, your journey could lead to other opportunities, and that's what it's always been about for me. Like I start off just a dude telling stories because an NPR affiliate pulled me up on stage and was like, "Can you tell a story?" And I did, which led to other things. And you don't want your journey to be a closed door because somebody else has control over you.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you used in the book launch that worked well.
Right. So I think that was kind of my strength coming in, is understanding the logic behind marketing. A lot of people will function in this reality that if their art is good enough, people will care. And that is not the case whatsoever. Your family and friends will care, but you're not looking to build a career off of your family and friends. I got news for you, that won't work out too well. So what I really tried to do is, even when I was in the process of writing, is give people space within that story. So I found ways to engage in the social media algorithms to tell my story. So I would say like I just wrote the first chapter of my very first book, and I let people be along in a journey of about 3 years of just being a kind of scrappy, gutter punk kid, because the subtitle of the Zeta Beer Tour Biggest Stories of Punk Rock Poverty and the Search for Peace is telling that story and then saying like, this big dream that I have is here. And then when it came time to we ended up having to do a Kickstarter to cover the publishing costs. Um, I had press releases in international papers. The Kickstarter was the new and noteworthy within an hour. We hit our goal within less than 12 hours, and a lot of that was being relational, letting people be a part of the story before the story unfolds. And so a lot of the structure behind marketing isn't about getting people to care. It's about getting people to care about themselves within the lens of your story and giving that freedom. So even if you're not telling, really vulnerable tales like I am about your own life, even if you're telling about a murder mystery, find a way to give people space and also do your research, understand where your audience is, and understand how each social media platform targets a certain audiences. Unfortunately, the golden age where you could kind of do more guerrilla marketing is mostly over. So you will have to, actually put money into it now, unfortunately.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
My favorite book of all time is a book of prose called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And really, I think the big thing that I learned about it is that brutal telling of what is inside your heart is timeless. So that book kind of goes in and out of prominence over the years. It is quite old, but that book is timeless. I read it at least once a year, and I'm finding that I'm always pulling truth from that. And as much as you would think that kind of very esoteric prose wouldn't inspire stories of, crusty gutter punk rock DIY basement shows, that influences all throughout my story and the way that I tell stories.
And for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
So my favorite quote is actually from Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. I feel like that book gets a lot of reputation for being a really heady and intellectual book, and it certainly is. But I find that it is incredibly common and beautiful in its levity. And the main protagonist, Pierre Bezukhov, says in kind of a drunken stupor, "Lord, I have sinned, but I have several excellent excuses."
Excellent. Well, CJ, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at CJ Campbell Zen. That's Zen. You can also follow my blog where I release poetry every weekday. That is my blog, Bad Poetry. Then is at cjcampbellblog.wordpress.com.
CJ, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Brodie.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.